What up, y'all? James here, and I got one conversation that I wanted to have today that I think this might get me in trouble. Hopefully, it just sparks a lot of good conversation and shares a good bit of knowledge for you. Anyway, these are real lived experiences from me, and I want to talk a little bit about why do publishers make the decisions that they do. And what I mean by that is why did they come out with this game at this time? And why do they make as many games as they do? Or why does it feel like they're taking too long to make the next thing that you think would obviously make sense? And so I want to talk about that because it's not black and white. Like there's not just one reason. There's lots of reasons. And then the company's makeup makes a lot of factors into these decisions. And so there's a lot of different categories I'm going to talk about in this video. And so if you grab one snippet of this and drop it as a hey, James thinks this about whatever, and take that out of context, you need the context of this entire video for it to make sense. So I'm putting that up on the upfront. So if I'm misquoted somewhere, it's probably for that reason. So let's talk about it a little bit. The number one reason companies do what they do in a lot of cases, again, this is not carte blanche. It is, but in my experience, working for a big company and doing things on my own, right? So bigger company versus like indie, right? Solo business owner. It's cash flow. Cash flow is king, as they say in business, and it makes a lot of difference in when and where and why things come out when they do. So I'll talk first about timing. The pressures in bigger companies can sometimes feel artificial, right? So, and what I mean by that is what do we have coming out in the fourth quarter? Like I used to hear things like that. Now I heard that in corporate America, right? When I worked in marketing, it was, what are your sales numbers look like for fourth quarter or this month? Have you hit your goals? You're 13% off your goals. What are you going to do over the next 11 days to help make that up, right? Things like that. Because that's how bigger companies tend to kind of view things, right? A really high level. Whereas indie folk might be like, how do I pay my power bill next month? Or how do I get enough money to get this game ocean freighted or things like that? So it can change drastically based on the size of the company, that sort of thing. So talking about timing depends on when you have kind of the big swells of cash flow coming in because maybe you just launched a Kickstarter or you just had a big product that went out to retail and it had that initial sales volume versus, the lulls when you don't have something coming out and there's no money coming in. That can feel very desperate and that can feel very, very, very rough. So sometimes, again, this is not always, sometimes publishers can rush a game to market because they need some money. They need money to come in. They have payroll and bills, and running businesses are expensive, right? No matter what, whenever you turn around, it feels like somebody needs money from you for something, right? All the individual projects have these, I call them internally leeches, it's almost like things that just constantly are pulling things out of the P&L and out of your bank account. But then also just the business, right? The overall business has a lot of things that are constantly pulling money out. But, one of the biggest ones is payroll and being able to pay your employees. Now, in my case, now that I'm indie and I'm a solo business owner, it's just me, right? So I just need to make enough money to pay rent and survive, which right now feels not so good. And I think we can all relate to that inflation is bad and housing pricings are bad and essential prices for groceries and gas and all those things are bad. And so that's I think we can all relate to that. But there is a lot of pressure as a solo business owner of, am I making the right decision on this? Am I ordering the right amount of games? If I make a mistake, am I hamstringing myself, or am I potentially putting myself out of business with a bad decision on a project? And a lot of this is gambling. We're forecasting because we don't get product instantly. We have to go, cool, I think this game will sell in 6 months because I have to make it. It has to get shipped here, has to get ingested and imported and then brought in and then made available. And that's a long process, right? And so the time from, ooh, this game's hot, to when you can actually put it on a shelf or make it available for people to buy, things can change. And then you're sitting on a warehouse full of games and dead product, which is doubly bad, right? Now you're paying fees for product that's not moving, not to mention all the sunk cost into the product. So cash flow and timing, a lot of things, I 100% have played games where you're like, this game doesn't make sense. The rules don't, it just feels like it was rushed, and it was rushed out the door, I'm sure, because there were internal artificial deadlines at that publisher. And I say artificial because we choose when we put things out, right? So we choose that. Now, there's again, I've relisted them. There's lots of reasons why things get either pushed out early or delayed or whatever. But at the end of the day, they are our deadlines to make or break. There's a lot of, let me mute the computer making pinging noises. There are lots of other pressures, right? Like, will you, especially in crowdfunding, right? Like, we feel the pressure not from an individual comment of, when is this coming? Why is it delayed? That sort of thing. It's the accumulation of comments, right? It's like when all you hear, what feels like is negative, because also the positive people are just saying things like, can't wait to play it. Well, that doesn't affect a lot of things time-wise or on your schedule, but having people yell at you about, hey, this I should have already had this by now, and you said July and it's July and you're not even started manufacturing, why? And although if you've done a good job of setting expectations and you've done a good job of telling people along the way how things are going, they shouldn't be surprised. There should never be really a big surprise about where the project's at, right? Because as I've said in plenty of other videos, if you've watched these videos, is they're not, Kickstarter makes us list it as a deadline. It's not a deadline. It's an estimate. And in my case, if I can make a change to Kickstarter or crowdfunding in general, I would say that we don't do deadlines anymore. We do ranges, right? So if everything goes to plan and is perfect, you could have it July. If it goes as bad as I think it possibly could, it might be, March of the next year. So you have a range. And then now we can speak to the range that we predicted. Now, we might still fall outside of that range, but I think that would be a bit more approachable, more realistic, right? Like setting these things. And I know some of you guys are like, yeah, but this other company I follow, they never missed a deadline. Well, everybody makes art differently, right? It's not like a cookie recipe. Well, even a cookie recipe is a bad analogy because there's 50,000 different cookie analogies, right? But everybody makes their art differently, and there's a lot of different processes to it for everybody. And my approach is to bring something in and work with backers in a way where they do have some input. Well, that input costs us time, right? So if I don't get any input from you and I have something ready to go and we bring it to the thing, sure, it can mostly be ready. We could probably put it out, but I've just never made games that way, right? I've always taken input from backers, and we've always added or moved things around within a project based on that input. So I like doing it that way, and I like doing that when I'm a backer. So, that's just, everybody does it a little bit differently. So anyway, that range, I'm rabbit trailing, but that's kind of crowdfunding pressure can also like I've got people saying, hey, we would really like Bloodstone. I'd really like to do Bloodstone, but Bloodstone's not ready. And I really want to concentrate on getting the 2 projects that I owe out the door before I really turn my focus heavily on a new project. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not working on it. It doesn't mean I'm not working on other projects that will be launched as well. But that's a big factor in why it hasn't already had a campaign, right? Because obviously I have materials ready, right? Like that's not, obviously people have played it and liked it and want it. So as for me, as someone who needs to make money to keep doing this, I could do that. But on the flip side of that token, this is going to get into one of my last points that I plan on circling back to at the end of the video is my personal philosophy. So I'll get to that personal philosophy toward the end. So just stay tuned for that. Some of this kind of ties into the next little ribbon down the line is why do we make a game, right? Because like sometimes you'll see a game from a publisher, be like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why are they making that game? Like that's nothing like they've ever made before. And a lot of and there's again, every publisher is going to probably have a different answer to that. And so I want to talk a little bit about, just the different reasons why a publisher might make a different kind of game. But it does, sometimes it can be related back to cash flow, right? It can be that ominous, never unrelenting kind of feeling that we need to keep making things that produce revenue to stay alive. And so when that question comes up of what do we got planned for fourth quarter, and the answer is nothing, then the answer might be, well, what can we get ready in time for the fourth quarter? So again, this is going to come back to philosophies and business and how the two things and kind of how they kind of typically bump up against each other. But so like I personally, I don't want to make games because I need cash. I want to make games because of the game and the experience that we're trying to deliver through that game, right? Now, the experiences that I try to make through a game versus what other publishers try to do, everybody has their own motivations, right? But for me, one of the main driving reasons is I want to produce cornerstone memory type experiences. Like you're sitting around a campfire with your friends talking about board game moments, and games that I've made fall into those memories, right? Like, do you remember that one time we were playing Sorcerer City and I was like, please don't let the Kraken show up, and I flip the next thing over and it's the Kraken and I lose and you come back and beat me because I couldn't figure out how to, right? Like, or hey, I'm like, as long as I don't pull a shard out this turn, I'm going to win the whole game in Wonderland's War. And I've pulled out all my shards. I've only got one shard in the bag. There's like 18 things in here. It couldn't be that. That's typically my luck. I love stand-up moments, and I love stories that make me fall in love with characters and things like that. I don't want to make a game or take a game that I do love and rush it to a certain specific time slot because we need cash. Now, I'll be very transparent that this has happened at places I've worked and projects that I've had. Now, where I try to make up for this particular thing, whereas, hey, did we rush a game to crowdfunding because we needed cash? Sure. Did I release it broken? No. So this is where I think, you can probably look at my timelines and know one of the luxuries, I think, of crowdfunding is having those sales up front allows you the time to hopefully make it right? So like, sure, maybe you rushed it because you needed cash and you needed to get things paid and you need to take care of your employees and that sort of thing. And people jumped on the boat and want that game. And you're missing deadlines because you're trying to make the game right. I think that's commendable. I think that's what you should do, right? I think the worst thing to do is rush something to launch, then rush it out the door because of pressures, and then deliver a bad experience or a broken game or something that's just not what you envisioned. It's bad not only for the backers, but it's bad for all your partners. Like there's designers who've spent years of their lives and thousands of hours making that game, And if you don't hit sales numbers, then they don't get rewarded for all that hard work. And that's not fair. It's not fair to the artist who drew the art. It's not fair to anybody who touched the project. And so, at least in my case, that's where you'll see, like, I'm never going to rush something out the door that's not ready. But also, like, it's a real factor. So, like, it's always interesting to me I don't understand it, because you see my back numbers, you see the games behind me. I've backed over 1,000 board games through Kickstarter. James, how many of those were actually real backings? The last time I did a math on it, it was like 60%. So hundreds. I've physically gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Kickstarter board games, and I've never rushed the creator once. Even on some of, like, the ones that are on the far end of the spectrum, like Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a great one on me. Like, I'm really looking forward to playing that game because I love the theme. I love spooky season. I love a campaign game. And it's been like 5 years in the making. And when they did send it to us, they sent it broken. And then they've had to make an errata pack. And I just got the errata pack. So now I'm super excited when it gets a little bit closer to spooky season, a little closer to fall. I plan on diving into that. And never once did I email them or go make a comment, this is crap. Why? If it's not ready, I'm getting myself even more upset about getting something that's not going to be enjoyable. And, like, that's the worst case scenario. I paid money to be miserable for years and then get some. So I don't understand that. I don't understand it. Not from a creator standpoint or a backer standpoint. I don't get it. Why people there is no advantage to a creator taking longer, right? Like, the sooner they get something to their backer, the sooner they can make more things. And to make more things means they can make more money off of those things. Again, that's not my reasoning to do it, but it is a reasoning. We do have to make money to keep doing this. So, I'm ranting a little bit, sorry. But making a game because you need cash, or making a game, or going and signing a game specifically to go, well, cool, we'll plug it into this hole on this date because we just need something there. It's not the way I want to make games. I'm not saying that there can't be good games made that way. I'm not saying that. And I'm sure if I was having behind closed doors, I'd have 20 publishers come to me and say, James, that scenario you said that doesn't produce good games, I've made tons of good games that way. And I would be like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying I don't want that to be my motivation for making games, but I am saying that definitely is a motivator sometimes, some places. That's all I'm saying. And, the reason I want to talk about this sort of stuff is I feel like if I can give you a little bit of insight as to why some decisions are made, being more educated can only help you understand why things are the way they are. It's a double-edged sword, but sometimes ignorance is bliss, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I don't mind talking about this stuff. I don't mind being transparent. It's always got me in trouble. So quickly, I'm already at 18 minutes. I don't want this to go for forever, but talking a little bit about indie versus corporate. And this is obviously very much a gray area in our industry because we have such a niche industry that most board game companies are very small. So, like, I would say a small company is 10 or less employees, right? But I would say it's probably even I think 10 or, there's probably some other, like, more official bracketing or framework. But, like, looking at it from my point of view, I think 7-8 employees is a pretty small company, small team, to get as much stuff that has to get done to make board games and be successful. So you've got companies like me that's just one employee, one person that works with contractors, freelancers. You've got other companies that have 3 or 4 people that are on salary that work at a company. You've got some companies that have 20, 30 employees. And so I know of a few board game companies that have 60, 70, 80, 100, right? Those are like very few. Those are like in probably single digits. It's pretty small, probably. The majority of board games companies are going to probably fall in that small category of 10 or less employees. And, indie can only take this amount of time to make a game. And what I mean by that, this amount of time, take as much time as they need if they have a major success. So smaller indie companies are going to need one of those big, what they call tentpole projects or tentpole games, evergreens that keep producing money that you're not constantly working on, but keep producing revenue to be able to, have the luxury of taking time and not rushing more games out the door if they're doing this full time. Because there are a lot of people that are moonlighting in board games, right? So they work a normal day job or a regular full-time job, and they do board game making as a side hustle, side job that they would love to move into full-time if the finances or that tentpole project ever hits for them and they're able to transition. That was, for me, it was Grim Forest. When that was our second game, did that one, and then I knew that I wanted to give it a go, right? I wanted to see if I can make this happen. And there's been many moments of strong struggle, fetal position in the corner of, have I ruined my family's financial future? Like, there's a lot of that, like a lot of that, because there's so many big moments of making plays. And I mean this in the business sense of making bets on games that you think are going to hit a certain level, and you have to forecast and gamble a bit. And then if you're wrong, you lose a lot of money. And then you throw in a thing like a world pandemic that throws economies into turmoil, and you make plays that were made not on that information, and it just gets really, really ugly. So, just know that indie versus corporate are going to really affect these. Why do publishers make the decisions they do? Because of the payroll that they have and the obligations they have as a company. One of the reasons why I haven't hired anybody, I could definitely use help. And if I had help, I would be able to make, like, it wouldn't take as long to get you Wonderland's War and Tidal Blades 2. But I don't want to risk bringing anybody on and then having to let them go because things didn't work out or I made a bad decision. Now, if I'm making a bad decision, it's only on me and my family as opposed to ruining somebody else's livelihood. I don't think I could do that. So, I don't think I could do that. We hired up. I hired up. I say we. It was just me. I hired up people the first time I launched Druid City Games and thought we could do marketing. I thought we could do a bunch of other stuff that would produce revenue. And it totally didn't work out, and I had to lay those people off. And it was one of the lowest points of my life. Like, those people are all great people. They've moved on to do other awesome things. But, for me personally, like, that was a super low moment in my life. Like, I don't ever want to go through that again. So, if I were to ever hire anybody in the future now, I would need a lot of financial stability to, and I would ask a lot of other people that are involved, about, like, am I making a good decision, right? Like, here's my numbers. Does this look good for the next, say, 3 years? Like, I can't screw this up, right? Like, that sort of thing. My hubris took me in. I thought I could do everything earlier, but the world has humbled me quite nicely. And then lastly, so I'm going to try to wrap this up pretty quickly. I know I tend to ramble. So my philosophy being, I just want to make the very best game and product, right? That's why you see my games usually have a very high production value at the best price that I can, which I understand those feel like oxymoron, like they kind of conflict each other. But I mean, making the most best thing that I can, and not like, I'm not trying to like make a 500% profit margin on you, right? Like it's priced fairly as best as I can. And you can see that by, if you go back and look at my profit and loss forecasting video that I did before, and I openly talk about profit margins and where I try to set things to keep the business healthy. But that's really ties into this part of it of protecting the business, keeping the business healthy, so that I can keep making these, because I've got a lot more stuff that I want to make. I've got new worlds like Tidal Blades, of the Tidal Blades quality level that I want to make, but the business has to make money so that I can keep attracting the best talent to come and help me make those, because I can't draw for shit. And I don't have the time to design everything. I'm not Ryan Lockett. I can't design, draw, and do everything myself. Ryan's an amazing talent, and I'm so glad. I love his games. I can't do that, right? So I have to pay people for those things. And so the business has to be healthy for me to be able to keep them motivated to come want to work with me, right? Like, they've got to make money, and they can't just make enough money. They need to make enough money that they want to do the next thing with me. So that all accumulates to my main philosophy is player. It all blooms, it all sprouts from player experience. And I talked about that earlier, in the fact that whatever the game's ethos is, whatever it is it a party game? Does it make people laugh? Does it make memorable moments? Is it a campaign game? Does it make memorable moments within that structure? Is it a Euro game? Does it make memorable moments? Does it make people feel smart? Does it make them have a certain feeling? I'm always talking about that with my partners, right? Designers, playtesters, artists. What are we trying to evoke? Are there feelings? Are there memories? What do we want the end result to be when people walk away? What do they say their experience is? And then if we're talking about adding a new mechanic or adding part of the narrative in a way, like, what do we, like, I always try to tie that back in of, okay, you want to add this new mechanic. What part of the memory feeling evoktions, that's not a word, the things that we're trying to evoke from those players, how does this tie into that? And it needs to make sense, right? And it's kind of nice because it helps. It kind of helps you go, well, you know what? This thing that we added, it's really not helping on any of those main goals that we have, so let's get rid of it, right? And sometimes trimming the fat is necessary. So, have I failed on this philosophy before? Absolutely. Will I fail again? I hope not, right? I hope not. I think now that this being our North Star, it really helps me know what type of games I want to make. It helps me say no to things, and I've said no a lot in the past year. And it's also part of the reason why, like, say again, coming back to Bloodstone, that it hasn't been relaunched yet, because it's not ready. I want it to be ready, and I want now, since it's kind of a unique game, a unique project in my lineup, I want it to be, when it's launched, it's more ready than these other games have been, so that we can get it in production faster and get it on the table. Trust me, I desperately want to see people playing Bloodstone. I really think I know it was kind of my very first design type of thing, but I just think it's good, and I think people are going to really, really enjoy it. Now, is it a tentpole game? Is it who knows? Who knows? You can't. If we could all predict evergreens, we'd all be rich and making games and drinking umbrella drinks on the beach. That's just not how it works in art. But I'm proud of it, and I want the final result to match my expectations for it. And I might be overdoing it a bit because it's my baby, but I don't know any other way to do it. So that's what I'm gonna do. Sorry. But I do have, there's quite a few other things, and like, we've got big plans for the future of Tidal Blades and the future of Wonderlands War, and then, like I said, some new projects, some new things that that don't check those previous IP boxes. But I have to have success on the things that we're doing now, so that those things can happen. So, and this doesn't just apply to me; this applies to all publishers. So if you've got a publisher and a line of games that you really like, this is why supporting them is it's really important and very helpful. So, all right. I don't know if that helped. If I made things worse, better, I don't know. So I hope it helped. And my intention is to help by education and then also just being transparent. So I hope that did something for you. And I should have more updates on Tidal Blades and Wonderlands War. Guys, I work on this stuff every single day. I am just in the throes of trying to get these projects where I want them before I hit print buttons and go on that. So more info is coming for both of those very soon. All right. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for, if you've listened this long, I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Get in those comment sections and help fight for a little bit of truth within the board gaming side of things. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.